everyone, welcome back to my podcast. Today, our guest is Gary Fowler. I met Gary about 3 years ago at the University of Auckland, and Gary was a mentor in the Workplace Insight program. Welcome, Gary.
Thank you very much, William. And thank you for the opportunity of doing this. This is my first podcast, so let's see how we go. Okay. Just as a caveat, this is my personal views and opinions and are not related to the Auckland University's program to support international students in any way. So these are my thoughts alone, and we'll kick off. I've had a long and varied career. I was qualified at Auckland University with a Bachelor of Engineering and graduated too long ago to remember it. But I've had 3 major careers during my lifetime. Firstly, as an engineer, I started working in New Zealand in the food processing industries, moved across to the UK and worked both as an engineer and an IT project manager in the offshore oil industry. I lived in the UK for about 16 years, and when the project that I was on, which was for the design, build and construction of a new oil and gas platform in the North Sea, when that finished, I returned to New Zealand. I then was employed by Air New Zealand, the national carrier in New Zealand, for IT project management, and have subsequently become self-employed, working as a consultant for a number of companies around IT systems, specifically around HR and payroll.
Wow, that's quite a variety of different industries and different roles. And Gary, you're from New Zealand, right?
Yes.
And you spent 16 years in the UK?
Yes.
Wow.
That gave me a little bit of flavour about what international students coming here might experience. However, the UK is easy because English is the common language, and but there are still cultural differences and certainly some differences in the way that companies employ people and the job market as a whole.
Right.
It's a varied career, and if you asked me when I started my career what I would be doing now, I would have been way off in terms of the opportunities that have come up and that I've taken and changed my role. What it has meant is that I've been able to utilise the skills I've developed in one role and transfer those to another role. And so I've continued to learn and expand my repertoire of skills, and I've enjoyed the changes in careers and roles that I've had. It's one thing, if I don't like a job, then I will change it. I will start looking. A job is too much of your life to do something that you don't enjoy. And it's far more important to look forward to going to work rather than dreading it.
Right. And before we dive deeper into the career topic, I was curious to know that because we met each other through the WIP Workplace Insight program at the University of Auckland, and I was a mentee and you were my mentor, so I was really lucky to have you as my mentor, and I'm curious to know that what made you want to join the program as a mentor?
Okay, I had registered as an alumni at the Auckland University, and I saw a post come through about this Workplace Insights program called WIP, and I thought that would be interesting. I'll meet another group of people, probably a different age group, and I would find that really interesting. So I volunteered for it, and I've found it a lot of fun. I hope the students I've worked with have been able to learn a little bit from me, but I have learned a huge amount from them. In terms of, some of them have some amazing life stories. They show initiative and courage and bravery in terms of coming to New Zealand in the first place. And without a doubt, they are the people who are going to achieve and have successful careers.
Well, I absolutely learned so much from you, and that's why we are here today after 3 years doing the podcast, and I hope because I personally learned so much and you shared so much with me, so I thought it would be really great to share your experience to a wide range group of students.
And I'm happy to do so. It may hopefully it will give some people who are contemplating coming to New Zealand and knowing that they will have the opportunity of working in New Zealand, either as holiday jobs or potentially a permanent role after they've finished their studies. Just how to approach finding a role, and how New Zealand's culture might be slightly different from their own, and how to be effective in terms of finding those jobs.
Right. And if you are an international student at the University of Auckland, make sure to check out the WIP program. It's Workplace Insight program. It's designed for international students, help them to develop networking skills and also help them to understand New Zealand workplace.
Yes. I have found it's a very effective program, and I think the support that the university provides is really good.
And when was the first time you joined as a mentor?
When I first met you.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I was lucky then.
Yes.
So it's been quite a few times that you volunteered as a mentor, and by interacting with so many international students, what have you observed from the program as well as from the international students, and how do you think the international students can make the best out of the program?
Okay. Firstly, I'd say the students I've met are great. They are, I would say, in the top 10% of the population. They have, as I've said before, have the courage and bravery to move to a foreign country with a foreign language, be prepared to study and be exposed to a different culture and potentially work in New Zealand. I think changing countries, changing study is daunting for some people, and I think these students have a great story to tell in terms of that alone is enough to interest employers about their initiative and being able to get things done. In terms of the program itself, I think it's very well structured. It provides advice not only from the mentoring side of things, but day-to-day advice around how to write CVs, how to make contact with people, coordinate with employers around internships. So it's very valuable and well worth taking on board. It does require work from the students. The mentors and the university won't find you a job. You have to go look for it, and that requires a certain amount of dedication and commitment in terms of writing CVs, networking with companies, expanding your social circuit, and becoming proficient in English, at least to an extent to be able to understand and be involved in conversations in a work environment.
Right. As you mentioned, a lot of international students are from different cultures, countries, and sometimes it's not that easy to immediately understand the culture in a different country. For example, in the WIP program, international students join the program to seek for help to help them land a job or learn more about New Zealand environment. At the same time, New Zealand is a country that, how do I say, it's a small place, so everyone, it's like you need to develop a good relationship with other people. So how do you balance asking for help while not being too straightforward?
Okay. The New Zealand culture is very informal. For example, you would expect to address everybody in a work environment by their first name, and that would be from the CEO down, and so that informality allows you to be informal with staff in terms of asking questions. I would suggest that asking questions is one of the best ways to to actually begin to understand how to relate to people in a slightly different culture. And people will be more than happy to respond and answer questions. If you're hesitant about asking questions, you can always say, may I ask a question please? That will be absolutely fine. It will allow, it will open up conversations and you will learn something. It could be as simple as, is this appropriate to do now? Or would you like me to start this part of the work? There is a balance between using your initiative and confidence and checking in with your team to understand the bigger picture and what you're trying to do. I have yet to come across an international student who is too aggressive. Most people are slightly reticent about asking questions. That is not a problem, but do ask the questions. People will enjoy it. As a mentor, I loved it when students came to me with a raft of questions. They had prepared in advance, they were focused on what they wanted to do in terms of finding a job, and they would say things like, what companies could you recommend I contact to see if there is a job in this particular field? Or how do I network more effectively? Or how do I revise my CV for this particular job? That's great because it shows that people have actually prepared and they've put a bit of thought into the work. And that's the same in a work environment. If you have what I call realistic confidence, that you are confident in your own abilities, but you are not arrogant in terms of assuming that you are better than you actually are. People will recognise that confidence and have confidence in you yourself about what you can actually do. The networking side of things is something which again could be socially daunting, but it's about expanding your social circle. If I come back to the networking side of things, Auckland is a very small city. There's about 1.5 million people in it, and there's a saying that there's actually only 2 degrees of freedom in Auckland. It means that if I met somebody I didn't know, if we talked about it, we would probably find we had a common acquaintance. Okay? So networking means that, and that smallness allows networking to be really effective to the extent that you only have to meet a small group of people in a particular field, and they in turn will know almost everybody in that field.
Right.
So if you are looking at a professional association, say for data management or engineering, then you don't have to have a network of hundreds of people. You might have a network of 20 people, and they will probably know every engineer or data management specialist in Auckland. And so if you are looking for a job, that networking is very, very good. And the funny thing is that it may turn up, job opportunities might turn up when you're talking to somebody in a gym, or as part of a sports team, or a hobby, or anything it is like that, because there's always tempting to remain in your own cultural group at the university, but until you actually expand and start socialising with Kiwis, you can't really expand that circle beyond that group.
Yeah, right. Just now you mentioned that you came across a student who is too aggressive. Can you give an example, like what kind of questions you would feel it's too much?
It's not the type of question so much, it's the style of which the questions are asked. You don't want to turn your questions into the Spanish Inquisition, where you're saying, tell me now, and this sort of thing. The pace of asking questions is based on the speed at which the person answers them. And it's best if it's just one question at a time. And it might be that you might ask a question and the person says, That's a really good question. Give me a second or two just to think about how I'll structure my response. In which case, just relax and wait. They're going to come back to you.
Right.
And then once they've responded, then you can ask another question or build up on that answer. But just do it in a measured way, in a relaxed way.
Yeah.
Then that's absolutely fine. It does pay to ask intelligent questions rather than things that have necessarily just come to the top of your mind.
Right.
There is, and that just requires a bit of preparation, whether it's in a job interview or in a social occasion, listening to the other person and deriving questions from what they're actually saying, remaining on topic, remaining on topic is probably the most relevant thing. People in Auckland or in New Zealand in general are happy to answer questions.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a very flat society. You could ask a question of a teammate, or you could ask a question of the CEO.
Yeah.
It will make no difference. People will be happy to respond, particularly for international students who are finding their way. People are actually quite generous with their time in terms of doing that, and so there's no real restriction in terms of asking questions, particularly if they're relevant to the topic that's being discussed.
Yeah, Kiwis are known as being friendly and nice. So
Well,
yeah.
yes, and because our pace of life is not quite as fast as some other places, people actually have time to answer questions. And it can be in a social situation or it can be in a work situation.
Right. And another question I have is, for example, international students in the program, and if they ask you about the job vacancies, they ask, do you know any company or do you have any contacts who has job opportunities? Do you find this question is appropriate?
What I would like is for them to have done the first tranche of evaluation. So if they're looking for a job in pure IT, that they've identified which companies have departments like that. So that might be the telecoms companies like Spark or Vodafone. It might be some companies that are building apps. And so they've already shortlisted and they would say, what do you think of these companies? And that's great because it shows that they've done some preparation. And they're not expecting to do the work for them. And I can offer some advice and say, well, Spark and Vodafone are two large companies. And these ones are smaller ones. You, depending on the style and what you want, do you want to work for a large organisation or a smaller one? Then you might want to try these companies out. It's great when people can be seen to have done some preparation and given it some thought, so that the questions are effective. That's much better than saying, do you know any companies that want an IT specialist? That implies to me that they haven't really thought about it much and they're asking me to do the work for them.
So be ready to put all the effort and do all the homework first. Not to push all the responsibilities to a mentor. Mentor can help us to, for example, if you have a few options, maybe mentors can help us to see through what's the best option.
Yes, and as that, being a mentor, there's a couple of things that I typically ask students. One is, what job do you want? And I would expand that to be something quite specific. Do you want to work for a large company, a small company? Do you want to travel as part of your work? Are you prepared to commute? Are you prepared to work shifts? Do you want to work weekends? Once you've answered those questions and a whole lot of other questions, then you can have clarity around the type of job that you want, and that will make your job search that much more effective. If you don't know what you're looking for, it's really hard to find it. So that's important. And the other thing is, in terms of networking, having an elevator pitch or a 30-second speech to be able to summarise you, your current position in terms of whether you're studying in New Zealand and what sort of job that you might be looking for. I've found it invaluable. This 30-second elevator pitch is based on if you walked into a building for a job interview and you happen to be in the elevator with the CEO and you have 30 seconds until he gets to his office, what are you going to say? Here is an opportunity that you can talk to somebody who's highly influential. If you have that 30-second speech, you can roll it off, introduce yourself, and explain who you are, why you're actually here. I've come for a job interview today. I'm really interested in looking forward to this. And you can explain that you're looking for a job in IT or whatever it is. If that 30-second speech is prepared well, you can roll it out very quickly. There's no ums and ahs, and you can tune it up to reflect exactly the position that you are looking for.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I remember I practiced this with you, Gary, and it was really helpful. And it looks like it's only 30 seconds, but if you don't prepare it beforehand, I would actually get stuck. Like
Yeah.
I don't know how to introduce myself within 30 seconds
Right.
in a very, fluent and efficient way to introduce yourself.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that was really helpful.
Yes, and you can use it in social occasions and professional occasions and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's something to have in the back of your mind. You never know when it will become useful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gary, if you don't mind, I put you in the spotlight. How would you like to introduce yourself in the elevator pitch?
Good morning, my name is Gary Fowler. I've come to an interview with your company, ABC. I'm really interested in the role in project management. I'm really looking forward to talking to the interviewers and potentially meeting a few more people. My particular speciality is around IT systems in the HR world, and I've had quite a bit of experience in those roles with large companies, and I'm currently self-employed and looking for another position.
Wow! That's a very great pitch. 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you are watching the video, please prepare your elevator pitch.
Yes, and you want to talk a little bit about yourself, a little about your current situation, and what you want out of the conversation. You just want to be able to, if it is a true elevator pitch and you happen to be there with the CEO, it's basically just getting your name in front of them,
Yeah.
so that if they are involved in the recruitment process and they find your CV or your interview notes, they'll be able to put a face and name to the interview. Okay, that just gives them an opportunity of saying, well, I've met this person and they were really neat. I'd like to interview them again.
Right. And previously you mentioned that networking is a very important part in New Zealand, in a
Yes.
smaller country, especially in Auckland as well. But usually when students apply for jobs, they usually go to the website and see this vacancy and then go to apply for it. How do you think they can apply the networking skills when they apply for jobs?
Okay, good question. Networking isn't the only method of finding a job. The
Yeah.
traditional going to the job searches and then applying either online or through a letter and a CV, they're not as effective, but there's more of them.
Yeah.
So it requires a certain amount of hard graft or hard work to be able to set up your CV, write a covering letter for each application. You need to tune your CV for the particular role, and if you're in a position where you've had prior work experience, it is worth highlighting your achievements. Now, achievements of what you've actually done rather than what job it is. Okay, so if you have done some business improvement project that save the company $100,000 a year, then put that into your CV, rather than just being able to say, I worked in project management. Okay, it's something real and tangible that people can then latch into. Okay, always ring up the company before you put your application in, even if they say we're accepting applications online only, because you will have further questions over and above the description of the job online. Okay, and if you can say, ring them up and say, I would like to talk to the recruitment team about this role, and you'll be put through to a recruitment specialist mainly, or possibly, and be able to say, okay, I have a few more questions about this role. Can you tell me where it's located? How big is the team? What is the culture of your organisation? This shows that you've actually thought about the role, that you've done some preparatory work, and you've put your name in front of the people, so that when your application comes in, they say, oh, that guy Gary, yes, he rang me up about the role. Shows that he's interested in it. And you can then tune your application and your CV to the particular role. And you have an advantage over just delivering an online application. It's absolutely essential to do that. Even if they say, online only, I think if they do that and they resent you calling them up, then it's not the job that you want. It's not the organisation you want.
Right.
Okay. You're there to honestly make the best application you can, and you need to find out more information about it.
Right.
Okay. Now with the CV, that's your founding or base document. Include, if you're starting off in a career, include personal stuff as well. Where you've travelled, what you've done, what your goals are, over and above just the necessarily work experience and study. Okay, this is your opportunity of painting yourself a picture so that they can understand who you are. And the more information that they have available, the more real you will be to them, and more interesting. So somebody who writes a very bland CV, which has just study information and particular roles, it's a bit of a silhouette. You don't know who the person is. But if you add that you were raised in a certain place in China and that you've travelled extensively in the interim, they start to fill in that silhouette with the person.
Yeah.
And that will make it more interesting.
Right.
Okay. When a recruiter has 100 CVs to read and they're all very bland, they'll just go through one at a time and their eyes will start to close. If they come across something which is really interesting, written almost like a life story, they say, hey, this is interesting.
Yeah.
I'll put this person, I'd like to interview them because they sound interesting.
Right.
Okay. So yes, CV needs some work and it needs to be continually revised. The cover letter is also important to the extent that it's your opportunity of fleshing out further, so that you can talk about the specific role and any particular attributes and skills that you have that are pertinent to that job.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Gary, you just shared your view on how we can better prepare for the whole process. As an international student myself, I think I wish I could knew this much earlier, because when I applied for jobs, I thought I will need to go through the application process, and I didn't. I also did quite a lot of networking, but I didn't realize that networking is actually an important part to land a job. Because later on I realized, also I talked to the recruiters from my company, and then I got to know they actually note down some candidates when they actually talk to them during those career expos.
Yes.
So, and I realized that all the effort you put in on CV, cover letter, and all the application written content is to help the recruiters understand you better, to get to know you better as a person. And if you get the opportunity to talk to them or call them, it's actually a much direct way to interact with them and to help them to get to know you much more and much more effective than reading the text from a paper.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the other things which is worth noting is you can cold call companies to the extent there's a company that you're interested in working for, but they don't have any ads or jobs being advertised at the moment. That doesn't stop you from ringing them up and saying, I'm really interested in working for your company. Do you have any roles that are coming up? In which case there may be. If not, you can say, can I please submit my CV into your candidate pool so that you can consider me if any further jobs come up in this area.
Yeah.
That's great. First of all, they will be happy to take your CV because that means that when a job does come up, it's very easy to ring you up and say, are you still looking for a job? We have something that might be available.
Right.
Okay. That saves them advertising for roles and all of that sort of thing. So it's a way of getting into the front of the queue.
Yeah.
Okay. It's good practice because you're actually doing applications effectively, and the more you do it, the easier it becomes.
Right. And Gary, you covered some of the parts that what employers they are looking for, and are there any top qualities that you think they are looking for from the students?
Yes. Yeah, I think, and this is where I believe international students have a bit of an advantage because you've already proven yourself to have initiative and a certain amount of courage in terms of coming here and learning. Now, people will say New Zealand's experience or experience in a New Zealand job is important. I don't actually hold by that. I think that any experience is relevant. Okay. In New Zealand, the culture is such that it's very much based on teams working together effectively. So you need to have the relevant skills, but don't think that because you don't have all of the skills that you would not be considered. No candidate is perfect and no job is perfect. If somebody has 60% of the skills they're looking for, that would be a good match. Okay, so don't turn down or decide not to do applications because you're not a perfect match for the job. Make sure that you apply. The worst they can do is say thank you, but we're looking for a more experienced person. That's fine. You've actually put in another application and you've learnt a bit more about it. Enthusiasm. Be enthusiastic about the job and be prepared to work hard. Working in New Zealand is quite a social thing. People enjoy working, they enjoy working together, and you need to be part of a team. So being enthusiastic is a great basis for that. Having, I mentioned it before, realistic confidence, being confident about what you can do and being realistic about what you can't do. That's absolutely fine. Then people will know where to put you in a job and they won't overload you with responsibilities if you don't have the experience to cope with those. Okay. Have initiative and be prepared to work in advance of what you're actually doing. So if there's something that needs to be done, be prepared to volunteer to do it and take the next steps in terms of keeping things progressing. Be prepared to learn, particularly if you're starting off in your career. The most valuable thing about the job is actually the learning opportunities, what you learn both informally and possibly formally in terms of other skills. Okay, and that might require you to do a certain amount of work over time or in the weekends and that sort of thing. Take on opportunities. If somebody says, oh, we've got this other project, would you be interested in being involved in it? say yes. It would be great. You never know where these sort of opportunities might lie or what would lead to. And as I mentioned before, be a team player, be able to be socially active, and I mean within the team itself, be a contributor and learn at the same time. Those I think are the key skills that people will look for. And the other thing is to have fun. Okay, work is a social activity, and if you get in the right team, you'll have fun working with people.
Right. Well, thank you very much for sharing those secrets on how to find a job. During the interview, some of the questions interviewers ask are very tricky to answer. For example, when they ask, what's your plan for your career in the next 5 years? And another question is like, very common question is, what's your weakness and strength?
Yes.
So how do you think we can answer this question in an appropriate way?
Okay. The first thing is to be absolutely honest. Okay. In terms of taking the first one, is where do you expect to be in 5 years' time? If you don't know, say you don't know. You're saying, look, I am at the start of my career. I'm looking at building some work experience and skills, and I would like to take opportunities as they come up, within this organisation. And I'm not sure where my career will go. The fact of the matter is, people today will have at least 3 different careers in their lifetime, and they will have multiple jobs in each of those careers. People at universities are being trained for jobs that don't yet exist. Okay, so if somebody used to say, I want to be a senior manager in such and such an audit team in 5 years' time, I think that's actually very restrictive. They might be very focused on doing that, but they may well be missing out on a huge number of opportunities that would be far better to pursue. I would say, my philosophy is that keep your eyes open, look at the opportunities that are coming, judge them, and then take them on board. I think most people end up being disappointed about the things that they don't do rather than the things that they do.
Okay.
That's
very true.
And in terms of strengths and weaknesses, if it's a job interview, that would probably be focused on your job. And it might be things like, well, I could learn to listen better and understand more. My strengths are, I am a completer finisher and a detailed person. But you might want to expand the answer to include personal attributes. And that's absolutely fine. Again, that's painting the picture of you so that they have a better understanding. When people employ somebody, they want to know the person. Skills can be taught, but the personality of the person is embedded in them, and it's very difficult to change that. So if a person comes across as arrogant or something like that, and you say, I don't think they'll fit well with the team. Okay, rather than this person is a bit lacking in this particular computer language. That can be taught, that's easy. But it's the person themselves. Will they fit in with the team? Will they contribute? That's the sort of thing that's important.
Okay. If someone thinks he or she is not a good team player, can they say that?
Or
they prefer to work on their own?
Well, I would phrase the answer in a slightly different way to say, look, one of my strengths is working by myself, where I can focus 100% on the role and do the work. I'm not a natural team player. I'm a bit of an introvert, and that's where my strengths lie. And they can infer from that maybe you're not the most social or outgoing of people. most people actually enjoy being in a team once they have the confidence with it. Not everybody in the team has to be an extrovert. The introverts may actually be the people who provide real value. I remember I was in a meeting and we were discussing the way of doing something, and there was one guy in the room who didn't say anything in the whole meeting until the last moment, and he summed up the whole issue perfectly and provided a brilliant solution. And he only spoke for 30 seconds in the whole 1 hour meeting, but he contributed so much in that 30 seconds, and he was a team player. Okay.
Yeah.
So different styles don't necessarily mean that you're not a team player.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It comes across as respect for each other and a degree of empathy in terms of how people work.
Yeah, right. So trying to rephrase it in a better way.
Yes. If somebody is really wanting to find out what your weaknesses are, well, I would say, well, how many hours do you have? And I will go through all of them.
I have so many weaknesses.
Yes, but I also have some corresponding strengths as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, be honest. I think an interview technique that I have learned is be brutally honest. You're there to sell yourself, but don't go beyond that. People will very quickly recognise that you're talking above yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, and you're not being totally honest.
Yeah.
That's not a good look.
Yeah.
Right? And if they ask you a difficult question, and you can say, look, just give me a couple of seconds to think about the answer to that. That's absolutely fine. Okay. I'm at the stage now where an interview to me is an opportunity to meet people. Securing the role is almost secondary because you're just presenting yourself, and if they like you, they might offer you the job. If they don't, they won't. And that's absolutely fine. There's always another job around the corner.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you present yourself in an honest and real way, people will pick that up and trust you more. Trust is probably the one thing that comes out of an interview. Can I trust this person in this role?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. That's actually a very good, you just said that you take the interview as the opportunity to meet people.
Yes.
And if you look at that way, actually I feel like when you interact with the interviewer, it will be more natural and the authentic yourself.
Yes.
Instead of, oh, because I want to have the job, that's why I need to show like the perfect myself.
Yes.
So yeah, scary. So just you previously said that international students, they come to a different country, and compared to local students, some of them might be more courageous. And at the same time, they are also, because as international students, they probably have less understanding of the local culture and the working environment. So, and as well as languages. So what they can do while they are at uni to help them find a job in the future?
Okay. And it comes back to networking to some extent, but not necessarily in a professional context. If they have particular sports that they want to continue, then there's New Zealand is a very sporting country, and there are clubs for every sport around the place. If you join those clubs, you will immediately be networking with a new group of people, and that will build confidence, and it will give you exposure to the Kiwi version of English, and you never know, friendships may develop and that sort of thing.
Right.
So I would recommend sporting clubs or gyms, or if you're into hobbies, whether it might be art or fine art or things like that, there are a multitude of different clubs and societies around that like-minded people get together. And I would really recommend getting involved in those so that you start to appreciate the culture a bit more. You can, if you try hard, study at Auckland University and never go outside your circle. But I would think that that's a bit disappointing to the extent that part of the whole experience of coming to another country is to learn about the culture,
Right.
be exposed to it,
Yeah.
and get to know people.
Right.
So if you do that, then you will build up the language skills. You'll immediately have a budding network that you could utilise later on for jobs, and hopefully you'll enjoy yourself as well in terms of getting out and about. You never know, it could be like you do, Elliot, tramping or outdoor activities and that sort of thing, where you can meet up with other people and at the same time see a bit of New Zealand.
Yeah, that's actually a perfect way to meet other people at the same time you have fun, and you just naturally get to know other people because of similar hobbies and
Yes.
interests, rather than going to a professional networking event and both of you like are very formal.
Yes.
And whereas in like those social settings, it's like very chill and you easily can get to know each other.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's a very good point, because those sort of social settings, or where you have a similar interest, are much easier to get involved in. And by practicing or just being involved with those, it will make professional networking that much easier and less daunting.
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely.
Yeah.
Cool. Is there any other action that international students can take?
Do some preparation. I would assume that people who are going to come to New Zealand and study will have done quite a bit of research about New Zealand, about what courses might be offered at which universities, and so they will start to understand what they need to do in terms of everything from accommodation to enrolment in courses and what New Zealand might be like. It would be useful to actually expand on that a bit around the social side of things and say, okay, I enjoy playing badminton or tennis. Yeah, are there tennis clubs in Auckland? Yes, there's hundreds of them. And say, okay, I'll make an effort to actually join up with one of these clubs when I know where I'm going to be living. There's a colleague at work who plays tennis at 7 o'clock each morning. At the local club he walks to and back. There's those sort of things will help you introduce yourself into New Zealand culture, put it that way.
Yeah.
The number one thing is about coming here as a whole is to have fun. Okay. Yes, you will study hard, and yes, there will be a lot of hard work associated with finding a job, but remember, it's all about having fun at the end of the day.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's more than study itself. Study is only a small part of it. And maybe especially for a lot of students from Asian countries, because of the culture that you pay a lot of attention to only study
Yes.
and spend not as much time like to other hobbies and interests.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about like people from similar regions as I'm from, because that's how I was taught to study well, and then you don't need to worry anything else. But it's so different here. It's
Yes.
like, and New Zealand is like people love outdoors and adventures.
Yes.
So yeah, just take the opportunity to have fun here. It's a
Yes.
beautiful country.
Yes, it is. It's Auckland has the sea on both sides of the city, and the weather is pretty good, particularly in the summer. The country is beautiful. It's relatively underpopulated with only 5 million people.
Yeah.
So there's certainly opportunities of getting away and being by yourself or with a group of friends on a beach, and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So as part of the whole exercise of coming here, I would really recommend people take the opportunities to plan to see the whole of the country and get involved in the New Zealand culture.
Definitely. I feel like when I go travel around New Zealand, those taught me much more than what I have learned from uni, and that's something really valuable and it stays with me.
Yes.
For most of the papers I learned from uni, I almost forgot all of them. But it's those experiences, it's those people who I interact with, those are the valuable memories, and it stays with me, and
Yes.
I can take it away no matter where I go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. It's you want your luggage full of memories when you leave, if you do leave, and you know that's it is. It's the valuable side of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you would like to share, Gary?
Just one thing. That don't be intimidated because you're an international student. I think international students have at least the same kudos or compared with the local Kiwi students. Okay, some people might say Kiwi working experience is important. I don't actually think so. Any work experience is relevant. So be prepared to actually say, look, I worked in Hong Kong for 5 years doing X, Y, and Z. That's really valuable. Okay, or I worked in San Francisco, or whatever it might be. Those are things that will interest interviewers and put you a step on the ladder to being offered a position, even if it's not necessarily in Auckland or in New Zealand. It's still relevant.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So don't undersell yourself. Be honest with what skills and that you can bring to the party, but don't consider yourself to be second tier in any way. You can provide a huge amount to this country, and hopefully it can provide a lot back to you.
Right. I found that really, really valuable, and it applies to me as well. Well, thank you very much, Gary.
You're very welcome.
And
I've enjoyed this.
I've learned a lot from you, so I hope this episode will also be helpful for a lot of more international students who are looking for jobs or who want to understand New Zealand more. And thank you very much, Gary.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Probably next time I'll invite you back to share more of your personal experience, because Gary is like professional in sailing, and you've been sailing since you were 14.
14.
Yeah. So I would love to hear all the stories that you have been sailing around the world. That would be really interesting. Hope you can come back to the podcast.
Likewise. Yes, I'd love to.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Okay.
everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.